This is the official opening of the webinar organized by the City of Vienna in the course of the Progressive Housing Week that has been set up by the PES group in the Committee of the Regions, together with the PES and the S&D group in the European Parliament. Exciting moment in time. A lot is going on with regard to affordable social housing in Europe at the moment. And we are happy that one of the initiatives that the EU has launched, the Affordable Housing Initiative, has found so much interest in this audience and in this little or big family of the affordable housing community. I am sorry if people have issues with their technology. The best is always to switch off your microphones as well. That will ease. And I see Amsterdam is coming. It's lovely that you use the chat already. We will do that later. Few housekeeping rules. We will have a few speakers sharing especially what their thoughts and their ideas about the affordable housing initiatives and their plans. And I'm delighted that we could win Mr. Slavomir Tokarski from DG Grow to give us a general introduction about this important new project, which is part of the EU's Renovation Wave strategy. And he will explain us what are the plans of the Commission with regard to this important initiative. We will then have two examples from cities, and I'm really proud that we managed to get those two capitals who are closest together on the globe, Bratislava and Vienna, who have a long-standing tradition of cooperation, will present their views. First, we will have Vice Mayor Lucia Staselova from Bratislava. She's responsible for housing, so she will give us an insight into the situation in Bratislava. And then we will have Julia Girardi-Hoog, a colleague of mine. She has been the manager of a project we are very proud about. It's called Smarter Together. She will tell you everything about that because we think it's quite exemplary with regard to what we know about the Affordable Housing Initiative. We will then have reactions by two representatives from European stakeholder organizations who are very much into the issue of affordable housing. That is Sorka Edwards from Housing Europe and Barbara Steenbergen from the International Union of Tenants. And we will obviously then give you also room to discuss and ask questions, and that will be a big part of this today's morning. And I'm very, very happy and honored that we could have a renowned, high-rank expert and good friend to give us some closing remarks and maybe opening up a little bit also for a more international perspective. Elena Šolgajová from Bratislava, from Slovakia. She has been working a lot with the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe in the past years. She's today the co-chair of the EU Housing 2030 project. She will tell you about that as well, I think, herself. But now it's time to get started, and I welcome at the moment nearly 100 people already. So we are really excited that you all came here, and we hope to do it, despite that this is a big group, in an interactive and empathic way. So let us get started with what this Affordable Housing Initiative is all about. And I kindly invite now Mr. Slavomir Tokarski to share the plans of the European Commission with us. Mr. Tokarski, the floor is yours. I can't hear you. I can't see you. Yeah, you're coming in. It's taking a little bit of time. Welcome. Welcome to Vienna House in a virtual way. Normally we would be in Brussels in Avenue de Tervuren, but this has to work as well that way. We cannot hear you.
And now, can you hear me? Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this invitation. And I'm even more happy because it's not only about me talking today, but it's also about me listening to your ideas about how we could actually make this affordable housing initiative live and suitable for what you can do together. So I hope that I have a presentation, but I hope that this presentation will also trigger comments from you, and we can have a sort of discussion about the best ways to go about this initiative, especially because we are still at the very early stage and we can modify or change the approach that we are thinking of. So if we can move to the first slide, please. Well, this is the renovation wave, because the Affordable Housing Initiative makes a part of the renovation wave. The renovation wave came as an idea in the framework of recovery and resilience plans of the member states. As you probably know, member states are working on those plans right now. These plans, which are supposed to use the Next Generation EU financial allocation for the relaunch of the economies, these plans are supposedly to be delivered to European Commission before April this year. As far as we know, most of the member states will present them in March for our comments and then for the implementation. So Renovation Wave was one of the 7 building blocks or flagships of the recovery and resilience plans as we see it in the Commission, because we thought that this type of approach would be particularly suitable for the relaunching of the European economy. Why? And I think you can see it on the screen, because there are 3 focus areas. On one hand, we are talking about energy poverty. We are talking about European Green Deal, because buildings are responsible for 40% of our energy consumption, but also for almost 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. And also because of the high potential for the creation of jobs, we made calculations which indicate that this renovation wave could create around 160,000 jobs in Europe, because this is the labor-intensive sector and because entry barriers are relatively low. So maybe what I would like you to take out of this slide is that from the very beginning, the renovation wave was built around a sort of multidimensional approach. We are trying to combine in one initiative both Green Deal, the idea of decarbonization, the idea of energy efficiency, but also the social element. Next slide, please. So this is a couple of ideas and recommendations regarding the energy performance of buildings. You can see that there are now almost 40 million people who are in energy poverty. There are around 800,000 social houses which require renovation, and also, and I think it is important for our discussion, these are the houses where the inhabitants were touched perhaps the most negatively, and where they were particularly exposed to the COVID impact. And we calculated the investment gap in this respect at the level of almost 60 billion euro. So if you can move now to the next slide, please. So this is the context for the Affordable Housing Initiative. As you see, we have this key objective of creating the 100 lighthouse social and affordable housing districts. So there is this element of inspiration, of creating a sort of movement behind those lighthouse initiative, lighthouse districts. And as you can see from here, the approach is really multidisciplinary. So it is about combining different technologies, digital, energy, technologies linked to circular economy, eco-design, renewables, what have you. But this is also very much about human-centered business models. And this is important because we've seen in the past that the failure of many examples of social housing was particularly due to the fact that this human element was very much neglected or not taken into account from the very beginning. So the ambition, if you look at those different elements, the ambition is really not just to create a space for people to live in, but it's to create a living social tissue where they can interact, when they can develop different type of activities, to design spaces where they can meet, where they can discuss, where they can do business. And I think it's also particularly important in the current context of the polarization of the society as we see it today. One thing which is important for us, it's also that we need to ensure that the renovated units with all these new technologies inside should remain affordable and resilient to price hikes. Next slide, please. So what do we expect from this initiative? Well, we expect that it will resonate well with European citizens, with European cities, and that it will really act as a sort of a lighthouse in a sense that it will be inspiring to young people, it will be inspiring to talented people. So when we want this to become, as you can read on the screen, a catalyst for new projects and policy and channel sort of skills and energy of local communities toward those projects, this is very much about the belief that we have that this initiative will really resonate well with the aspiration of people, with the aspiration of young people. It will really inspire them to come and join in. We also believe that this initiative could be very much local, bottom-up, place-based, and that by allowing for this industrial cooperation between firms, between social housing companies, we will also be able to create a sort of or bring local jobs to those districts, jobs that will be linked to green and digital transition. So we also will be able to pass this message that green and digital is accessible for everybody, and everybody can have a stake in it. So it's not only something that should be associated with difficulties, with cost, but also something that should be associated with the jobs, work careers, and aspirations of our citizens. Next slide, please. So how it's going to work as we see it, but I would be very much welcoming also your contribution here. First of all, we want to sort of trigger the creation of EU-level partnership around this initiative, and why? And this is where we are right now, because that could really ensure that those the intentions, the drive, the energy of the people would be really accompanied from the very beginning from all the necessary technical capacity and funding, and that we also should be able to activate a wide range of actors on the economic side, on the research side, to join in and to use also this initiative as a sort of testing grounds for testing new solutions linked to green transition, linked to digital transition, linked to smart construction. Who should be there? I think we need a whole variety of different actors. I mean, the approach per se is open and inclusive, so this list is not a closed list, it's an open list. And we see that in this type of partnership, we need to have a construction sector, we need to have SMEs, we need to have social housing sector, local authorities, financial institutions, and also the citizens, the inhabitants, the tenants, the vulnerable groups that could actually be the beneficiaries of this type of approach. We see also the link, and I think it is also important to the new European Bauhaus initiative. And I think that this approach can be also placed in a certain way in the context of the Bauhaus initiative we saw in the last century, and which were a sort of affordable housing initiative trying also to create a living space for workers and integrating different social functions. So I think they're still existing, at least here in Brussels, or in Amsterdam, and in many other European cities. But what we are trying to do is a sort of revisiting this idea and trying to adapt it to the reality of today. So calls will be launched in the second quarter of 2021. So please follow up on our website. You will find all the information there. The next slide, please. So once we created the partnership, we need to prepare the implementation in a sort that we need to mobilize support and advice for creation of project pipelines. And this is about access to funding, this is about technical capacity, this is about regulatory aspect. We can assist you there, we can mobilize different instruments. It is to be seen how this can work, but our ambition would be really to create a sort of support network that would allow you to move to this next step and allow you to start preparing concrete projects. We have different instruments already. We have the Bauhaus initiative, which is quite visible under Horizon Europe. I hope that in the couple of weeks, we should publish actually the first calls for Horizon Europe with affordable housing initiative being present there. We will have under cohesion policy European urban initiative, which is this time constructed very much around the idea of experimenting with new approaches and then mainstreaming them into cohesion policy programs. So we have the instruments. We just need to put them in the right order and to ensure that they really correspond to what you will need. And finally, the third step, as we see it within the framework of this particular project on affordable housing, is that we should really create the approach, the projects, the concrete projects, the experiments, where we will really integrate fully social innovation, where we integrate fully technical solutions, where we integrate digital innovation, where we also create a sort of very broad and inclusive model for the engagement of citizens, the creation of the spaces where they can work and interact together. And we also expect that from this approach, we'll also get a lot of feedback that would allow us to develop this initiative further and make it more suitable for what people need. So this is where I will maybe stop. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be waiting for your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Tokarski, it's great to hear a lot more about the Affordable Housing Initiative in this introduction. And I can just, looking quickly in the chat, people are already commenting a little bit, and they are referring to several interesting projects because you were asking for, participation and sharing of expertise from the ground. So there is ERIN, the European Responsible Housing Initiative, where you can find a lot of projects in their awards, which have been already organized 3 times in the past years. So that's already a rich, I would say, a rich source of ideas for further development of the initiative. And I'm now looking into the chat again, and I think some questions will maybe arise later. I have one which pops up into my mind immediately. A lot of people will be interested in seeing how this EU-level partnership you were mentioning is going to be set up. And people were delighted to see that you include different actors who are relevant to a successful implementation. But what will be the role of this high-level partnership? Are they going to be the ones choosing projects or designing the call for projects? Can you elaborate a little bit on that one? I hope we didn't lose Mr. Tokarski.
No. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
As I mentioned from the very beginning, this is not set in the stone, so we will be still shaping this initiative a little bit based on your feedback, but also based on what we will hear from this partnership, because this partnership is created in order to be our major partner in the whole initiative. So we expect that the partnership will be involved in all the steps of developing the initiative. That's why we want it to be so comprehensive and so large. But the exact tasking, I think, will come with the call for proposals, which will be published quite soon.
Thank you for that. There is another question in the chat. I will take one more question now, which is on the link between the Affordable Housing Initiative and the Bauhaus, the new Bauhaus, as it seems that the Affordable Housing Initiative is focused on outcomes, while the Bauhaus Initiative is more on the process side. How do the two things interfere with each other? How do they inspire each other? Can you give us an idea about that?
I'm not a historian of art or architecture, but I think the major point of interaction is the idea that all disciplines, that time disciplines of art, architecture, music, design, should contribute to something and should be put together to work for the well-being of the citizens. And I think this is the key element of Bauhaus, which is inspiring us today, and where we see also the community of creators, the community of people bringing in technical solutions, the community of people dealing with digital, getting together and creating a sort of living space where they can create for the districts. We will also have to think about how this can be made possible, what we do with intellectual property rights, how people can share this among themselves, how we can ensure that somebody will not run away with the ideas getting there, but they will be really used for those districts. But this is some sort of technicalities that we are convinced that we can solve out. But the idea is really to inspire people to come in, to join forces, and to work. I don't want to use these pathetic words, but to work for the people, right?
Yeah. It's good to hear that, Mr. Tokarski, and we will stop the conversation with you now, not forever, but just for now. I can inform you that in the chat you will find another list of examples people are sharing now with regard to good practice from the Housing Solutions platform and the Our Homes, Our Deal project. So we will collect all of these. And there is also a recommendation to include the aspect of construction workers' rights in your affordable housing initiative. I think that's a very valid recommendation. Good. So I'm happy to give the floor now to our next speaker. And this is, in fact, I'm very happy that you're with us today. We are going to share now two examples from Vienna and Bratislava. And we will start with the Bratislava example. I kindly ask Mrs. Stashelova, the Vice Mayor for Housing in Bratislava, to share her presentation and her views with us. If you would it would be lovely to switch on your microphone and camera, Lucia. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's great. Your microphone, we need.
Yes, can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, this presentation, but what you share is not mine. So
wait.
Please switch it.
This one is it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Here, good. And you just tell me which one next.
Yes, okay. So I would like to say at the beginning, I'm very, very happy to be invited in just in this time, because last day I have presented our new policy for the city Bratislava for next 10 years. And it was be improved. So it's very fresh, so I can introduce our plans a little bit for you. So I'm more than happy to be with you here today. So first slide, please. At the beginning, I go very quickly through the past because it has been said several times in several meetings, but it's important to understand why we are here where we are. So till 1989, there was no private ownership or housing market. The whole control was in the hand of the states. The most flats were in ownership of the states. Some of the flats were, we called it cooperative ownership, but definitely it was also the kind of states ownership. There were also few corporate stabilization flats, which was dealing some companies. And it was, I can remember also, it was very not so easy to getting an apartment, and you have to be happy and to make some connection in the state's organization. After revolution, there were different movements in state level. We have a large privatization and small privatization. It means that from states, the flats came not the state's ownership, but it goes to municipalities. And the next step was that the municipalities sell for the very low prices flats to citizens. There were no central registers, so the whole this procedure was not so very transparent, and there is really unknown who, how much, where, and under what circumstances became an owner. But definitely, it was the beginning of the first basis of the market in these fields. 1 or 2% of public housing, thanks to the restitution law. The law called that the law was about that some properties state must go back to the origin owner. So some of these buildings, some of these flats are now people live if they're they don't own flats, but they rent, but the conditions are very poor and very bad. And the rest, there was also the possibilities that local government can sold some flats, and at the end, now we are in the situation that in all Slovakia we have only 1%, or in Bratislava special, we have only 1% public housing. Next slide, please. Today, of course, there is a state policy based on belief that the responsibility for getting one's own housing is lying on the shoulders inhabitants. Also, the state claims that the mission is to create a stable market environment and allows households to live according to their income situation. Nevertheless, the topic of state support for housing in Slovakia is a political issue, and during this whole history did not disappear. What is good news? Next slide, please. So different kind of laws has been passed. In 2010, there was a law about state subsidy for housing development and social housing. 2011 on state subsidy for housing development for replacement residents living in restitutional real estate. In 2013 was established state housing development fund. It is very important, but not so easy. I will speak about it later. 2015, there was a degree that some public apartment could be built, and how big amount of costs could be paid by the state's fund. So we can say that this support from state is really something what exists, but it's not enough. Next slide, please. We ask ourselves after election 2011, does it work? The answer is it's not enough, because during this period of time from 1990 till 2018, Bratislava has built only 154 public flats, and it's really shame. So now we stay in the beginning of speaking affordable housing, and we have big plans. Next slide, please. So I tried very quickly introduce what we have starting with what we have starting and what we have achieved in these 2 years. At the very beginning, we create a working group for public housing. We're setting the objectives in a systematic issue, and also some operational steps, because we try to do in two ways in same time, to think about how plan, how work in next 10, 20 years. On the other hand, we have to show something to people who vote us. So we made also the big changes in organizational structure in City Hall, because there were really no organization body which deal with public housing. Also, we issued strategic document, study of the location of public housing, also some study for urban localities and their changes. And we also select different kind of urban localities for our own construction. Also, we set up Metropolitan Institute, and this body is responsible for organizing competition for our own construction. And what is the very important, what I have mentioned at the beginning, this year we finished the strategic document concept of the urban housing policy for next 10 years. Next, please. Before I started to speak about this paper, I underlined that what we have achieved very concrete. We're making some mapping what way we can construct the new public housing. We identified 4 ways: reconstruction, all building construction, cooperation with private developers, or cooperation with other partners. This was very important because we start piloting these ways to get the buildings and flats, and we can in the one hand we can create this new policy. On the other hand, of this pilot project, we can identify problems and context and some legal obstacles or legislation context. So it was very important to start in these 2 ways. Next, please. This is only illustration that we have also set up a concrete goal. Next slide, please. So the concept of the urban housing policy consists of different kind of chapters. The beginning is about analysis, where we are and what are our problems and what are our obstacles. And then we proposed priorities for the policy. And you can see this very important priority. It is an area. It is about housing development and how to really to get into the everyday working. We also have to think about managing the municipal housing stock, because it is very important how you deal with the existing housing fund. Also renewal of city housing and empty buildings and some old buildings in the city is very important. Big question and very tough conversation was the cooperation with the private sector. A lot of group people don't believe us that we want honestly to help them, and also to help people who don't have a space, their own space for living. But at the end we have some common sense of understanding. And last but not least, affordable housing for social disadvantaged groups. We half year ago we started pilot project with 9 flats together with NGOs who are dealing with homeless people. So this slide and this policy and this concept, I feel this is something what I'm proud of. And I'm really happy to share with other partners. So I'm really very proud, and I'm happy to be with you today. So thank you very much.
Lucia, thank you so much for sharing this experience. And there is one thing I would like to really take away immediately, and that is the enormous effort that you undertook to create a whole new governance system, in a way, in your city. Yeah. And I think that this is something where we should also, is important to share also with all the colleagues now working on the Affordable Housing Initiative in DG Grow, that in some cases you will have to set up a governance system in order to allow for the implementation of lighthouse projects, because without that, it's not possible.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is really a huge task that the city government in Bratislava has undertaken.
Yeah. We started zero, so that's really tough,
And I have one remark or question from the audience here for you, and that is about that you said that you're going to involve private developers as well, or the private sector. And there has been another remark on that also a little bit earlier in the chat. I'm trying to follow all of these, but it's coming to the point where we say, can we take any private investor into our cities? We have a whole discussion about the issue of financialization of the housing markets, and that creates a lot of issues all over Europe and even globally. And that means that, are we keen enough to see who is really coming to our cities to invest? Or is it local investors? Or do you have any criteria to choose them? And especially when you combine public funding with private investment, is there something to prevent capitalization of the public funding part, like grant caps or allocation rights or zoning laws? Do you use any of these instruments?
We understand that we are not able to move on without private development. We have to say it very clear. The state's fund helps, but you can see outputs during these whole years. The condition in the Bratislava, which is not very cheap city, the previous government wasn't able to use that money because the condition, very strict condition. So we try to find some way how to use state money together with other sources, and it's very, very complicated because the rules. So we to back to the private sector, we try to set up a very clear condition, and we try to be the powerful partner. You know, that we are the body who can dictate where we want to have public housing, not you, but we need them like a partner. So there are different kinds of partnerships. But what was the most important, to find out that it's legal. This was really, we was focusing on that, and we spent a year discussing then to them and back to us that it's legal, and we are not that we are honest, that we really, public housing is something what we care really honestly. Not, we are not the other developer who want to build and then to sell very quickly. So this was the issue, how to move forward, to presume then that we are really honest, and we want to do our best for people who we need, because this is not only for people living on the streets. The public housing should be for people who serve a city. Because when we have no flats to offer them, the city will die. There will no service for us. So you know, that's the whole circle.
Yeah, and I remember, because Vienna and Bratislava are so close, that we had a discussion about young families who could not afford living and housing in Bratislava. They were just moving across the border to the small villages at in the Austrian province of Lower Austria, and they were living there. I mean, it was good for those villages, but obviously not so intelligent when it comes to commuting and pollution, etc. So thanks for that, Lucia. Thanks a lot. Stay with us, please.
Thank you.
I'll now give the floor to Julia Girardi-Hoch to share the Vienna example, please. The floor is yours, Julia.
Thanks a lot. I hope you can see me now.
We can hear you. We have a nice picture of you. And you should share your screen.
My slides. I hope you can see them. Can you see my slides?
Not yet. Not yet. No. Now it's coming. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to present to you a Horizon 2020 funded lighthouse project. We've just been talking about the importance of having lighthouse projects, and Smarter Together was such a lighthouse project in terms of urban renewal and with a big focus on housing. The lighthouse cities still are, because it's still ongoing, Vienna, Lyon and Munich, and given the short amount of time, I will focus my presentation on what we did in Vienna. Just to give you the architecture of the overall project, we were, as I said, Munich, Lyon and Vienna as the lighthouse cities, and then we have beautiful follower cities of Sofia, Venice and Santiago. So all of these cities looked at they're building the housing buildings and how to get them into the future to meet all the upcoming challenges, etc. So in Vienna, we received the entire project received a funding of a total of 24 million euros, of which 7 million euros of EU funding went to Vienna. And in Vienna, we looked at a neighborhood, a district in Simmering, which is more of a social housing area. and this district, in this district, there lived approximately 21,000 inhabitants. Well, still live, and even more living now, because there were a lot of building activities happened, and urbanization, I think that's all European cities are concerned of it, are growing rapidly. So we need to look at how can we improve the existing building stock, but also extend the building stock where possible. And those 7 million euro EU funding triggered investments of around 80 million euros in Vienna. So there was really, it's a huge project. We started in 2016, January 2016. It was planned to be a 5-year project, 3 years implementation, 2 years monitoring, and we could now extend it to July 2021. So another couple of months to go. And this is the consortium we have in Vienna. And you can see it's not only about housing, but it's about really this wider look at the neighborhood, at the city district. It's about energy provision. It's about logistics. It's about technology workplaces that are also in the area. And it's about, of course, housing, city-owned housing, and housing owned by non-profit associations. And it's about energy, different kinds of energy provision and public transport. So the first learning we had with Smarter Together was really to learn to work with each other, to work cross-sectoral, not just housing, not just mobility, not just logistics, but really to talk to each other, to listen to each other, to understand the other parts' thinking, the other parts' way of work, and how to improve it together. And so we did look at the area physically, but most of all, we looked at the area socially. And as I said, it's a social housing area, Simmering. So we could find that there's a large share of migrants living there. And we found out that there is a large share of people unemployed in the area, and a very low educational standard of the people. So that was really something that made it difficult for us to talk about innovational aspects, because we found out that, for example, they didn't understand the concept of car sharing first, yeah, and that was not a matter of different languages, because it was that mobility project, car sharing project we tried in a housing block where mostly Austrian-born former railway workers worked, and they were just not familiar with the concept. We were so surprised. So we really learned that what we develop in the city, in the universities, in the industry, that is really an elite thinking often. And if you really want to roll it out to social housing areas where average people live, this is not the slums, these are average people. They sometimes have not heard of it, or they don't understand the concept at first. We could make it work after a lot of discussions, and now they're fighting for the car sharing. They really like it. But just this was something that we really put a big focus on, how to really make living holistic for the people, how to do a holistic refurbishment process. So all in all, we implemented 4 energy projects, 4 infrastructure projects, 9 mobility projects. We refurbished 4 building blocks and developed new tools how to talk and work with people, with average people. When it comes to solar technology, we realized when you really want to roll it out, mass roll it out in social housing where it shouldn't cost too much, it's really hard. We thought it's quite trivial, just put solar panels on the roofs. But when you really look at it closely and really want to roll it out in the entire district, there's a lot of legal issues, technical issues, static issues. The building stock doesn't hold the panels, etc. So we had to replan, for example, 4 times implementation of solar technology on this particular building blocks, and it was also extended. So all in all, we added 485 units. That was something that was planned anyway in kind of a traditional way. And with the help of the EU funding, we could really do add new ideas. And we used the EU funding to only finance, and it was also foreseen by the Commission like that, to finance the innovative part. And that was really a game changer, because the association owning those buildings block really said that, well, this is helpful. We can actually implement the new technology that our renters wouldn't have paid for otherwise. And like this, we could implement a power-to-heat solution, solar technology. We could add car sharing, spend a lot of time. You can see here the before and after buildings. On the right, you see after renovation, it really looked beautiful. And you see the group standing there that is now driving the car sharing. It was the Vienna, the first car sharing in social housing. When talking about buildings, we also looked at the school there that was in a dramatic state, and especially the gym. That was like nothing I would have ever believed was still existing in Central Europe. And we realized, okay, a building like this, we cannot renovate. We have to build a new tract. And with the help of the funding, we could rewrite a new tender, call for tender, and making it energy neutral, a zero energy concept. And within school buildings, we were told it's not possible because it's very standardized building procedure. You know exactly how many square meters you need per student, etc. But we had the extra funding, so we said we want to challenge it, and we can pay the extras. And it wasn't much, actually. It was just replanning, and now we have it up and running. You can see it's really beautiful, and it's underground, so it helps us to cool it better. Because as we heard before also, climate change is a huge issue. And especially in Vienna, we can feel the increase of temperature very quickly. And so we really need to think of how to keep buildings cool, and having them underground is maybe one way. And here you can see the entire, the new building, the classes track that was also rebuilt. And on the roof there, you can see all the new technology that was implemented. So this was really also a game changer of how we build schools in Vienna, because we could prove it's possible. You know, we have a pilot case, it's standing there, go there, look at it, it works. It wasn't so much more expensive than building the usual way, but like this, we have solar collectors, geothermal heat, cooling, etc. We have it all in place. We will save it the next years. We make savings by not buying extra energy. So we could really demonstrate that it's possible. And we've put a lot of energy and focus on how to co-create, really, especially when it comes to mobility, which begins and ends at the apartments of the people. So they begin.
Well, I fear we lost you a bit.
So it was mobility issues. Point in Vienna, now there are 9 mobility points all over Vienna. And also the car sharing will be further developed. But it was important to take this time to talk to the tenants. What sort of cars do they need? Where do they want to go? How do we do the booking system, etc. And also to talk to the students before planning this school in great detail to find out how they want to have the free break rooms. So also girls like to be there and sit there, and the boys can play the soccer, etc. So we developed a Simmobil, which is a vehicle, kind of a trailer that we put in different places in Vienna. And this concept was copied also for Venice, for example. They found it really useful to be in different places and talk to people about the ongoing changes, because they're really interested in changes to the neighborhood. And they have a lot of ideas, but you need to collect those ideas. So we did a lot of projects like car sharing, bike repairing for the kids there. They really don't have a lot of money. We did energy consulting, energy cafes, how people can save energy, because they're really concerned about the bills, the energy bills, of course. We did a project with all schools in the area to make the kids walk to school. It's a Beat the Street that has been copied to Munich. They do it a lot there as well, to really practically make people walk through the neighborhood and like that save energy by not going by car, but also making them really curious about the neighborhood. So it's really been a very holistic process. And I'm quickly talk about mobility and logistics as well. So we implemented a new mobility point where you can, which is in a public transport station 3.0. So you can rent a car when you leave the subway. How to do the last mile? You can rent a car there, an e-bike there, park your e-bike, etc. But we also found out that logistics is really a concern because of, and especially now with Corona, people are ordering a lot of stuff online and also ship it back. So we worked mostly with the post, and we found that logistics and producing logistics like Siemens, they save so much gas by introducing new electric-based vehicles, forklifts, etc. So we were surprised of how much is possible when you really look at the entire district of all the different aspects that you find there. And last of all, we also implemented data infrastructure, a data platform where we save all different kinds of data that we gain by car sharing, energy consumption, production, all the sensors that we installed for monitoring anyway. And we used the Fireware software that was developed by the European Union project. So we could, through this Lighthouse City project, also change the way the entire city of Vienna thinks about Fireware. And there's a big Fireware focus now within the city. So to end, I would like to give the overview of what we did. So we are finished refurbishing almost 70,000 square meters of social housing, adding additional housing like 250 apartments, and we're expecting to save 2,000 tons of CO2 now that all the changes are implemented with all the mobility and housing issues. And we assume that by all these renovation works, around 900 jobs have been created and secured. These are now, we are in the rolling out and replication phase. And this has been really a pilot project for Vienna of how to do it with this district focus. So now we've been granted Viennese money to do this, to roll this out, to add one more district per year. And there's been formed a special group, Vienna Plus, and they are looking at new areas, other areas in Vienna, where we use the same approach, the same district-based approach, interdisciplinary approach, and we will roll it out like this in Vienna now many more times. So this was it for the little time being, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing that project. And
Sure.
Obviously, I'm from Vienna. I'm as proud as you are about it. And we're always happy to share the findings. And before we go to some of the comments we might have in the chat, I just want to ask Mr. Tokarski in again, because I think that with the two examples from Bratislava and Vienna now, it would be very interesting to hear your first reaction about what you've been hearing now, if I may ask you in again.
Thank you for surprising me with this question in the middle of the seminar.
I'm sorry.
But very briefly, because I think, but maybe relate more to the Vienna presentation, where I found it really interesting, this issue of how to involve so-called average people and how difficult it might be, and how it is important that you get it right from the very beginning. So I found it really inspiring, and I also think that in doing so, social innovation is the key. I mean, there is no one definition of social innovation, but some people will say it's for people, with people, and by people, meaning that the needs to be identified together with the community. The solution has to be worked out with the community and also implemented with the community. And I think it is also a very powerful channel of communication. But all this work about the vehicle, about collecting opinions, about talking to people, so I found it very inspiring. And I think we should really integrate this into our thinking from the very beginning. And the second point, which is also, I think, visible in Bratislava presentation, is that, and I think here we are thinking it right about rolling out technical support from the very beginning, is that we should not underestimate little nitty-gritty technicalities. like those solar panels. That sometimes on the paper it looks very easy and very good, but in reality, then you are confronted with the number of technical, legal issues. So there is a sort of need for the support structure from the very beginning that would help actually in solving these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tokarski. And now, as I don't see more questions in the chat, I thank Lucia and Julia for their presentations. And I'll just invite in the next two speakers for more reactions. And I will start with Barbara Steenbergen from the International Union of Tenants. And I also ask Sorka to stay in the room, visibly at the same time, so we can have your quick reactions, because we also want to have some room for more discussion. Thank you so much, Barbara. If I can have your reaction, please.
Thank you, Michaela. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Lucia and Julia, for your presentations. Also, Mr. Tokarski. I think we learned a lot already this morning, and I'm happy that also so many people joined us. So I'm representing the International Union of Tenants, one of the best jobs you can get in Europe, if you ask me. So I'm doing this more than 20 years. What I would like to point out, I give you an example. I don't know how many tenants are present here in this forum. Normally, if it would be an European average, it would be 1/3. So 1/3 of the people in Europe, they rent. So if you put yourself into a position of a tenant, if you are a homeowner, at a certain point, you find a letter of your landlord in your mailbox, and he says, well, your apartment will be renovated. What do you think? What is the first reaction? Is it pure joy, or is it a worry? What is going to happen in the next time? And will I be able to afford this renovation? And I do think, based on my experience, that it is the latter one. The people are worried. They do not know what is coming, and they do not know, will I be able to stay? This phenomenon is called the Renovation Phenomenon, which means that sometimes after renovations, people get evicted. And that is one of the, I think, most urgent problems we have. And we have to pick it up because we have now the renovation wave of the EU Green Deal. We have now the Affordable Housing Initiative. So I think all people have to work together now to make this happen in a, I would say, socially balanced and adjusted way, also for the tenants, also for the residents. So the International Union of Tenants, they try to develop ideas how we can really manage this challenge. And the idea is not only based on public funding. Of course, public funding is the most important thing. And we learned it from Bratislava and Vienna, our twin cities who do so many great projects, really, congratulations. We learned that it has to be moderated in a way that public funding cannot be capitalized, so that it's really ending in housing affordability for the residents. And I think the second thing is we have to combine also this funding issue with the rent law. And now the tenants unions, of course, are coming into the debate because we take care that the rent law is fair and socially balanced. But obviously, we did not do enough. We have to do even more. And one principle that we really want to achieve now, when we come to this affordable housing initiative, also as part of the Green Deal, is the principle of housing cost neutrality. This is a technical term, but it is very easy to explain it. It means that the rent increases by renovation are fully balanced by energy savings. This is the so-called housing cost neutrality. And I think if we have this challenging project of the Affordable Housing Initiative, this should be the main criterion. It is the main issue because otherwise we end up in renovations. Ladies and gentlemen, from the rent law, in 21 member states of the European Union, modernization and renovation, the cost of it can be fully passed on to the tenants. So be aware of this danger, and please also be aware of the sorrows, of the worries of the people living in those buildings. It is not pure joy. It is a challenge to do it. And I truly believe in moderated and mediated solutions, like we heard it now from Julia. I think if you renovate entire quarters, and this is actually what we want to do with the European Affordable Housing Initiative, this has to be externally moderated. And we, the tenants unions, are ready to do this. We are in the quarters. We have our offices there. We are in the houses. Our residents are organized. We would be happy to help you with that. And later on, I would also like to tell a little bit more about code of conducts, how to do this. We, together with the social housing sector, but many, many other key stakeholders at European level, we realized a European code of conduct for responsible housing, thanks to the European Commission, because they started up this project. And I think this is something where we should rely on, so that it is not only a promise, but that it is also written black on white. And this is what the tenants unions of Europe and internationally would like to propose to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara, for your for your very clear messages. And I would like to immediately pass over the word to Sorka Edwards from Housing Europe, because they are setting up at the moment an interesting, I would say, website and project about the Affordable Housing Initiative, because obviously her organization, and she will talk about that briefly, is key to the delivery on the ground. So Sorka, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you yet. Wait. Sorka, we cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes.
Great. It's lovely to be together, if only virtual. I really would have preferred to be in a room together discussing this new project and the best way to make it happen, but there you go. Yes, so a few words. As you know, Housing Europe bringing together social public cooperative housing providers, and happy to be joining this morning. And I think great reminder there from Barbara just how crucial it is that we get this renovation wave right, that we make sure it's inclusive and doesn't leave people behind. And I think we can't underestimate just how high up on the agenda we are. And it's why it's great that the PES and City of Vienna are bringing the Affordable Housing Initiative to such a large group of stakeholders this morning. Because even if we think about the Green Deal being the flagship initiative of the European Union, and we see how many times our Executive Vice President Timmermans has mentioned that there will be no Green Deal if it's not a social Green Deal, we see how important this is, because the Affordable Housing Initiative will put the social element really at the centre. And even the president of the European Commission is now talking about how we live together in the future. She's talking about how we live together, but also at the same time reducing the climate impact in the Bauhaus initiative. So actually, this Affordable Housing Initiative, maybe it's starting small, but I think it really goes to the core of the flagship of the EU and the core of the future of the EU. And I think this getting it right is going to be really, really important. And then, of course, we all know we are really, in the more general terms, we are at a watershed point when it comes to housing at the moment, because of the stay-at-home obligation, and the fact that this has brought to the surface the inadequacy of our housing situation, also the fact that many people are without a home. We see also the importance of having less dependency on nursing homes, the possibility for people to age at home in dignity. We see that the expectations from our homes are growing, so we need to make sure many people have higher levels of connectivity. So it's really a watershed moment, and we see this Affordable Housing Initiative as really a way to develop those excellent projects on the ground, which bring together affordability, social inclusion, but also state-of-the-art technology in terms of construction and digital advances, just to give us a living lab of how we really need to think about how we want to live in the future in an inclusive and affordable fashion. I would just finish up because I know that I thought it was very important that the point made by Slavomir at the start of the session that indeed we are still early, and it's very important that we all work together to shape this. So I hope you can see a little bit the slides that are there. It's the first time I've used this platform. Can you see it? Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
So we've been thinking together with the social and public and cooperative housing providers, a few first thoughts on how this is going to be shaped, and we will have an event also as part of the Social Economy Week on the 25th of February to continue this conversation. So we're talking about we realized the complexity of the projects, and this we saw clearly in the case of Slovakia and Vienna, but we are still hoping this program can really kick off quite soon. And I think there was positive news on that from Slavomir, but we would like projects to be kicking off, keeping in mind the complexity by 2022. Ensuring affordable living costs, as we all agree, has to be at the core of this. Also protecting employment. At the end of your presentation from Vienna, you mentioned just how many jobs, I think you said 900 jobs were created as part of that initiative. So I think that aspect of building back better with sustainable jobs and sustainable communities has to come to the fore. And this has to be about working with large service providers, but also those small SMEs, which we know make up a big part of the construction sector. Again, the focus has to be about how the communities will keep the inclusion of vulnerable communities and focus on areas with social problems. And I think there we have to also think very strongly, as I mentioned, about the aging issue. Only about 10 to 15% of our houses actually are now fit to allow people to age at home in dignity and adapt to different health changes in their health. So this also has to be an aspect of that. Improving the quality of life in the homes, but also in the buildings and also in the common areas. And then this is also a little bit of the more tricky point, but obviously it is the core, because we talk about our homes, but our bigger home is also at danger. That is the planet Earth. And this is where we have to be looking at measurable reductions in greenhouse gas emissions at the district level, because very, very often the focus is on individual homes when we look at EU policy on energy. But what we are finding, and I think we saw it also from the examples from Slovakia and Vienna, when you go closer to the ground, we're actually working at a district level. We're working on a more holistic fashion with many different stakeholders and many different objectives. And this is why we welcome this Affordable Housing Initiative, because it brings the focus more in line with actually the reality on the ground. So it's a positive step forward. Then,
can I just ask you to come to an end, Sorka? I'm very sorry, because we are running out of time. I'm sorry. It's so interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, important. The last point. So act as a laboratory for digital skills, and a laboratory for new systems of renovation, hybrid systems of on and off-site renovation. And then I finish on the two key points. The financing. So it's obviously there is 750 billion euro on the table. However, there is no obligation for member states to use that on renovation and refurbishment, and the cost of these operations is not negligent. So we would like to see a specific funding program dedicated to this affordable housing initiative, which really respects the type of costs that are involved, the type of investments, or I should say investment, and that links into the last point, and that is also to use this as a laboratory for better regulation at European level. So the type of issues that affect, so that it can be the Stability and Growth Pact and how investments are considered, that can be also linked to state aid rules, and that is also linked with procurement issues and many complexities around actually getting these type of complex renovation programs off the ground when we have a quite complex procurement framework. So we would like to bring all the different levels together to make this a laboratory on the ground for the future of living, but also a laboratory when it comes to better regulation and a continuation of the work that we completed in the housing partnership. So sorry for taking so long. There you go.
No, thanks. Very valid contribution. I see Barbara wants to come in briefly, please. We cannot hear you. You need to switch on your microphone.
So now I'm live. It's not frequently the case, but I have to say, in a certain point, no, I disagree with Sorka, and I think it's crucial. The housing providers, so the supply side of the market, they also count in greenhouse gas emission reduction. This is dangerous for the residents because you can, of course, directly have an effect on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions when you change one source, let's say coal or gas, to renewable ones. But this has nothing to do with savings. And then you miss the link to affordability for the residents. So this is a crucial point. You have to count not only in CO2 emissions, you have to count in euros for the residents. And I really would like to ask the Commission, if you do some funding initiatives, if you put money into this, which we all hope, and it is necessary, that you respect these guidelines. It is very important. I'm talking about capitalization of funding, and again, that the savings are ending up with the people, with the vulnerable communities, with those people which would be otherwise threatened by energy poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara and Sorka.
Really disagreement. I think we have to find a way to hit all the targets, and this is the complex challenge. But we have seen projects together in the Responsible Housing Awards under the ERIN initiative, which actually do tackle both of those challenges. So maintaining affordability for the provider, for the tenants and residents, but also achieving the goals of reducing the climate impact of the development, climate impact during the use phase, but also increasingly now we are also forced to look at the climate impact at the extraction phase and the construction phase. So I think we have to find a way. It's not going to be easy, but this is why this Affordable Housing Initiative is so important, to balance those multiple objectives.
I will stop you two ladies now. I'm sorry, but I'm quite sure that this is not going to be the last time we are discussing this, as we have been also invited by the Commission to contribute. So I think that this is a starting point for maybe further discussion and more in-depth exchanges. I just want to not neglect our audience. And I think, because I'm not so familiar with the instrument, I think that Patricia from Ghent also wants to share. So I want to bring people in. Are you still here, Patricia? Did you want to make a comment? If so, I can give you the floor, but I don't think I'm able to. Doesn't seem like, I know. Okay, good. So before I do see some remarks with regard to the Affordable Housing Initiative. I think they are more directed towards the Commission now. I'm sorry, but with regard to how do you include the issue of tackling homelessness in the Affordable Housing Initiative? Is this a point where you're ready to discuss further? And we have the big issue of financing the whole thing. So maybe just two quick points for your reaction, Mr. Tokarski. Now Patricia is coming in. I'm sorry. This is the magic tool. Patricia, just wait 1 second before I give you the floor again, okay? One second.
And can you then repeat your question?
Well, I will ask you later, because I give the floor now to Mr. Tokarski. But keep patient.
Right, very quickly. First of all, indeed, it is just the beginning of the dialogue, and I think I can also speak on behalf of my colleagues. We heard a lot of interesting points and really think about them, but it's not the end. We are just starting our dialogue, and I can really promise to you that you will be involved in this inclusive approach, and we need all of you in order to make it a success. And I think this point about, I see it in the comments, saving earth and relieving people's burden. It's very true, not only for housing, but for the whole green and digital transition. So the people do not have the impression that this transition is done on their backs, but there is also something in for them.
Yeah.
And then the second point I would like to make is that I have to say that I'm very happy with the discussion. And we in the Commission, we also feel encouraged and thrilled, if you want, and inspired to go ahead. And we'll really do our best in order to make the most of this initiative, because I think it really sort of strikes right chords, and it somewhat corresponds to what young people want, to this longing for more solidarity, for the community-built approaches, for bottom-up. So I think that in one go we can really strike many different notes together, and this is also the power of this initiative and the appeal of this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Slawomir. And I now invite also Ghent, Patricia, because I thought that you were going to share something about the situation in Ghent, and I hope you can do that.
I'm a bit taken by surprise by the question. We are working on the UIA initiative. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes. The initiative is to renovate houses for vulnerable owners that don't have the money to renovate it themselves, and they get a certain amount, I think it's 40,000 euro, that they can use, and that they are helped to renovate their house. They're also helped if they have to move for a certain time, and then in the end, if ever they sell, then the money will go back. It's what I don't know the word in English, a rolling fund, we call it. So the money goes back to where it came from, and it will be used for the next one. So this is the project that Ghent is working on. It's quite interesting. We really have examples of people who are the perfect target group for it, but it's not easy to reach those people. So yeah, I think as a project, it can be a real boost for the vulnerable owners.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patricia, for sharing that. And I have another comment from Arthur Santos. Good to have you with us as well, about the importance to also see to the smaller municipalities with a very narrow budget in this affordable housing initiative, as there you have completely different conditions. So thank you very much for the discussion and the reaction, Barbara and Sorka. I really appreciate always to be with you. And I would like now, as we are really running out of time, I would like to ask our good friend Elena Sholgayova to give us some closing and wise remarks as always. Elena, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you yet. You need to have, your microphone is not on. Elena, no, you have no voice. You have to switch on the little microphone on the left-hand side of your screen. Yes.
There was some problem because, I was trying. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's such a pleasure to be again on the meeting of Housing Partnership. After so many years, it's already 3 years now. Let me have the advantage to take the little bit more historical perspective. History now shows that after the First and Second World War, the best examples of approaches to affordable housing were created across Europe. The Vienna case is more than 100 years. The Dutch, French, and Scandinavian models were created after the Second World War, where there was really a big crisis. The countries responded responsively, and there was a public response to these challenges. Then 80s, last century, brought actually this neoliberalistic approach with a very high position of market. And there was nearly religious belief in market powers, actually formulating the policies in then. But then, together with the great financial crisis, we really witnessed that this approach didn't work, and the gap between poor and rich was growing, and the affordability of housing as the basic human need was getting more and more problematic. And there were different reactions to that in different groups of actors, stakeholders. And I had the pleasure to be with the United Nations Economic Commission of Europe Committee on Housing and Land Management, which is an intergovernmental platform of 56 countries, not only in Europe, but also North America and Central Asia and the former Soviet Union. So the 56 countries, national representatives discussing what can be done about these challenges. And after 5 years of very difficult and complex discussions, all these countries, with all these differences, were able to adopt so-called Geneva UN Charter on Sustainable Housing. And this is the charter which formulates 4 principles of sustainable housing: naturally, environmental, social, economic, but also cultural adequacy pillar. And all this was actually adopted by the countries, but nothing too more happened. Then there were another initiative. There was a housing partnership of European urban activities. And there was a lot of work done by Housing Europe, by Union of Tenants. But these were the separate activities. So the idea came that we should actually connect our powers, and all the messages from all these individual initiatives should be actually harmonized in one place. And this brought along the idea of having the Housing 2030 initiative, which brings together UNEC, UN Habitat, and Housing Europe in an attempt to formulate what is necessary for affordable housing. And one of the messages is going to be, yes, it is up to the national governments and regional governments and city governments to make the priority of housing. We need to create long-term visions with sustainable, long-term, stable systems to support this to happen, to have really the affordability of housing. And to make a sort of comparison, we were like different instruments playing our music separately, not very in a harmonized way. And the aim and the objective of Housing 2030 initiative is to really create a sort of orchestra. If we play with all these groups of instruments together, a beautiful symphony. And now Michaela is going to laugh because this symphony is going to contribute to the world peace. But then I really do believe that by joining forces together, working together, listening to each other and reflecting what the others say and trying to find the best solutions is the only way. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elena, for sharing that perspective. And I only can invite everybody to also have a quick look into the Housing 2030 project, where Elena is a co-chair, and where we also, enter the room of the international and global arena with housing solutions that have been crisis-proof very much in Europe in comparison with other parts of the globe. So I think that learning from each other is vital, and doing this across all levels of government is extremely important. And we are very happy that we could do this today with a lot of actors from different organizations, from different cities, from different parts of Europe, with the Commission, with our friends from the International Union of Tenants and Housing Europe, and obviously also with our good friends from Bratislava, Lucia and Julia. Thank you so much for sharing your project. And to close this session, I would like to ask all the speakers to turn on their cameras so we can do what we normally would do also in a physical meeting, a nice group picture. And I thank everybody. We had 100 participants online on this platform. And this is really exciting. We are sure that we are going to continue the affordable housing debates at Vienna House. we are very grateful for the PES group in the Committee of the Regions to give us the platform to do that. I think this is timely and wise. And yeah, so everybody puts on a big smile, and I hope that Monica from the organizers, you can take a lovely picture from all these lovely people, because one lesson I would like to share with Mr. Tokarski is what you have seen today is quite typical. Affordable and social and public and cooperative housing is very much a woman's cause. And I hope that you appreciate that we always bring in a gender dimension in the composition of our panels, but also when we think about housing, because it's so close also to gender differentiated views of life. So I'm very happy that you're all here. I hope that Monica managed to do a picture. We just freeze for 1 second more. And that's it. Thank you so much for coming, and we're continuing the conversation. Thanks to all the audience.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you. A pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.